Father God, I want to pray this morning, giving you praise that, Lord, help us to completely abandon our hearts over to you. And Lord Jesus, I just pray that you will anoint the words that you give to Rachel this morning as she shares the experience that she was able to go over to Uganda with Caden and a group of people who just really, truly loved these people over there. Father, I pray that as she shares this morning that you will touch our hearts to see what it is that you are speaking to us through this ministry. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Oh, it is on. All right. Good morning, good morning. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you very much for supporting our trip. It's not often that when you go on a trip like this that you don't have to send out support letters. Mark was sure I was going to have to send out support letters. We have a whole stack of them. We didn't because so many of you were so generous in supporting us and being able to go over there. I mean, in 3 months' time, we had the money, and so that was really just a testimony to you and your heart for missions and for sharing what God's given us with others in other places. And so I just want to thank you all for supporting us and for sending us and allowing us to go. It was a wonderful trip. I'm going to share a few verses with you first of all. Psalm 143 verse 10 says, "Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. May your gracious spirit lead me forward on a firm footing." The song that the leader of our trip, which you'll see in some of the pictures that we have, she made a shirt for us, which I'm not sure, I think it's dirty right now, so I was going to wear that shirt, but I couldn't find it. And the verse that she put on that, or the saying that she put on that, is from the song, "Spirit, lead me where my faith is without borders." And this is a verse that, the song is not from this verse, but this verse kind of leads into that, asking the Spirit to guide us where he wants us to go. I'm just going to read just the chorus of the song. "Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. I will call upon your name, keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine." And so that really was our prayer, is that God would just lead us and guide and direct our steps. We had an agenda, kind of a loosely held agenda, but my friend who has gone often before, which we're going to see in a video in just a second, we're not going to do the video? Okay. I didn't know if you had gotten it with Jürgen. We did have a video that my friend who set up the organization ICHA, which is back on the board. ICHA means light in the Teso language, which is not the language of Uganda. Thankfully, Uganda's main language is English. That was very helpful for us. But there are many different languages that are spoken in the area that we were in, the Teso language, and ICHA means light. And she went many years ago. I'll try and give a synopsis of her story since the video did not work. I took a video asking her questions of how she started ICHA. But she went back in, I believe it was 2008. And she went, she and her family, actually her and her husband, this is before they had children, they hosted, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Watoto Children's Choir, but they tour in different places in the United States. And they're from Uganda. They're all children who are orphans. And they have a beautiful choir, and they sing. And they came, and they were in Marshall, and my friend hosted some of those children and their sponsor. And that is what put within their hearts a desire to go to Uganda and see, because they were like, these children who have nothing have so much joy and have so much peace and just so much life within them, and they have so little. Like, these are orphans that live in a children's home, and they have so much joy and happiness. And so we want to go to Uganda and find out how can they have this joy. And so her and her husband, Rocky and Chelsea Ray, went to Uganda for the first time, and they went to the Watoto Children's Home, and they served there, and they got to see the children and see how the Watoto Children's Home is all set up. It's a very, very organized children's home. I said, you need to come and train any children's homes that are here, because they're very, very, very structured, very organized. And they loved that, and they also met some very important people there on that trip. Out of respect, they use the terms uncle and auntie. Doesn't mean that you're actually an uncle or an auntie. It just is kind of like saying Mr. and Mrs. They met Uncle Mike, and they met Auntie Joyce. Two different people, they're not married, they're just two single people. And Uncle Mike had a dream to start. He had worked for the Watoto Children's Home, but he had a dream to go back to his home and to really minister to the very vulnerable people there in his town, or his city of Soroti. And he could tell that Chelsea and Rocky also had a desire to help people in vulnerable situations. And so he kind of proposed a plan. He said, hey, why don't we come together and start an organization that can help to sponsor the people of Soroti. And so and Auntie Joyce was also she worked for Watoto as well, but she also was from Soroti. Her family is from that area. And so together, they formed an organization called Aicha, which means, like I said, light. And so they started a sponsorship, and instead of, you've all heard of Compassion or World Vision, where you sponsor a child and you send money. That's kind of what their idea was, except different in that you were sponsoring the main caregiver for a home. And typically, it would be the wife or the woman, the mother of the children. Because many mothers over there are single, either because the father has left them or because he's died. And so you've got a lot of mothers with a lot of children, and so they would sponsor, so they got people to sponsor the caregivers, and so they would give them money to help teach them how to have life-sustaining skills. The necklaces that we were selling were made by some of those ladies. This actually was made by Auntie Joyce, which is a great practical tool for me to hold on to the microphone. And so that's how this dream of Uganda was born. It ended up happening. They had 12 families that they sponsored, but when Chelsea and Rocky, who were only there for 3 weeks, and then they went back a couple of different times, but once they came back here to the States, trying to run an organization from across the ocean is a very difficult thing. And so because Uncle Mike's gift is not administration, that piece of it kind of fell apart. And so the sponsors here in the United States were not being communicated with, and so Chelsea just felt like it was time to kind of be done with that part of Aicha. They are still organized, as they're actually recognized as a NGO, a non-governmental organization in Uganda. They are not a 501c3 here in the United States yet. We're seeing if that is something that God leads them towards or not. But they are recognized there, and so they can go in and they can support Uncle Mike. And so Uncle Mike now has a home that he calls, or an organization called the Aicha Foundation, and that foundation is the one that we went to go and serve with in Soroti. And so just that's kind of the backstory of why we went and how we were able to connect with the people there in Uganda. And that's kind of what she shared on the video that we took, which didn't turn out so well because it was just done on a cell phone and it was outside. We probably should have done it inside. But that's Chelsea Ray is kind of the one who's had this dream and this vision for helping the people of Uganda. And so that is the premise of us being able to go there. So here we go. Ultimate Uganda. On July 10th, we packed all of our bags, and, well, I packed them. Actually, I'd been packing weeks beforehand. Our living room was full of bags, getting ready to go, and mostly with things that we were going to be giving away. Honestly, most of the stuff that we lived with while we were there was packed in backpacks. Caden had a backpack with all of his clothes, and I had a backpack with all of my clothes, and then a few other things. All the rest of the bags are packed with soccer balls, toys to give to the church. The shirt I'm wearing, I'm actually going to move this up here. The shirt I'm wearing is from the church that we went to while we were there. It's called Musale Church, Changing the World with the Love of Jesus. And so the toys that we brought there from our toy room, which doesn't mean that we don't have toys, because we still have lots and lots of toys. But we were able to take lots of toys for their children's church ministry. And so one of those bags is full of those toys. And then clothes that we took over, and soccer, because soccer is the ministry that Uncle Mike does with the kids, the street kids there. So our bags, lots of bags. We came back with a lot less than that. So this is us just in the airport, our team there. I'm not quite sure how to make the pictures come up one at a time. Just keep clicking. This is, I'll go back to that. Our team there, you can see in the back picture, you can kind of see most of us there in the back. It's kind of hard to see in that one because it's kind of dark, but Chelsea's the one on the far right. I did, and it went to the Entebbe. And then, oh yeah, well, just a second. I'm going back here. This is us coming together. Joan is one of the ladies that comes to the ladies' Bible study here on Monday mornings, and so many of the ladies from here know her. But these are our shirts. These show our shirts that we have. It's kind of hard to see them. They have the shape of Africa. Chelsea designed them. And then the words, Spirit lead me where my faith is without borders. And that's us all wearing those together. And then this is us, and when we left here on Wednesday at 2 p.m., and we landed in Entebbe, Uganda, around 11 p.m. Thursday night, but they are 7 hours ahead of us. So all in all, it took us a very long time, a very long time to get there. We flew on three planes, I believe. One from here to Detroit, and then from Detroit to Amsterdam. We landed in Amsterdam, and then we flew from Amsterdam to, we flew from Amsterdam to in Rwanda. And then it's kind of funny because we went down and then up and then back down. And then to Entebbe, which is where the main airport is there in Uganda. And we landed there, and you can notice that there's one more adult with us. That is Erin. She is Chelsea Ray's cousin, and she is from Kentucky, and she joined us in Detroit. This is Chelsea, and she's kind of the leader of our group. There's Joan. She's wearing the shirt from the church. This is Erin from Kentucky, myself, and then Jackson is Chelsea's son, who is also 6, just turned 6, there, and then Caden, which is kind of covered up, or in the back is covered up. There's Caden. And we were definitely a team that had a lot of energy, especially 2 of us, had lots of energy, which proved to be a little bit challenging because there were lots of long car rides. Not only was there the long flight, but there was lots of traveling in country to different places. We got to Kampala, like I said. We flew into Entebbe, and then we drove to Kampala, which was about an hour away. This is at the airport, trying to burn off some energy there at night, getting all of our bags, and it's hot. It was hot there, although I will say it was hotter here while we were there in Africa than it was there in Africa, which was kind of funny. Sorry for you all to have to deal with that heat. Thankfully, it's wonderful this morning. Edwin was the young man from the Watoto retreat center, or the guest home that we stayed in. We paid Watoto, you can pay them, and they will give you a guide. And they took us, so they picked us up from the airport, drove us to Kampala, which is about an hour from Entebbe, and we stayed the night there in their guest home, or the compound. There's really a guest home there. And then the next day, he took us out to the Watoto Children's Home. They have different homes around the country in Uganda. They were established by people actually that are here in the States. I think they live in Florida, but they have established this, and I'm not sure how many years ago. There's a long story about the Watoto Children's Home, but they established this home for abandoned children there in Uganda, and their goal is to, as you know, if you know anything about the history of Uganda, that is where the invisible children were, where Joseph Kony was, and he kind of really did a lot of destruction in their country with stealing children and doing things that really tore their country apart. And the Watoto Children's Home, their goal is to rebuild Uganda through the saving power of Jesus Christ in the lives of these orphans. And so their goal is not to have children be adopted out of their country, but to build their country through the power of Jesus Christ within their country with their own children, which I think is a beautiful dream. And this is us touring the children's home. They kind of have it set up where they have a main, you'll see in a minute, we went to a baby's home, but then when they get to be 3 years of age, they go to live in a house with they try to have no more than 2 house mothers. So the children only have 2 different adults in their life at that point, so that they can really kind of bond and learn to build relationships like that. And so it was beautiful to see their organization and just to hear their vision and their dream for rebuilding their country. And the picture with Caden and Jackson is under, it's kind of hard to see because it kind of blends in, but it's jackfruit. I don't know if you've ever heard of jackfruit. I think they do sell them sometimes at Behr's. They're kind of big and they're kind of ugly. They're kind of big and they're bumpy. You'll have to look for them in the tropical fruit section at Behr's, but they're kind of bumpy on the outside. But inside the fruit is, I don't even really know how to describe it. We did have it once. It's good. It tastes good, but it's not really comparable to anything else. But they are very big and ugly looking fruits called jackfruits, but that's the fruit tree that they're under. And then some of the other children that are there, they all are very used to Americans because Americans come, or white people I should say, come a lot. And so they run up to you and they're very excited to see you and excited to see visitors. And they have schools that are there on their campus. They have churches that are there on their campus. A very well-organized children's home. We're hoping someday, eventually, I've got us on their schedule. They're not coming back to Michigan until 2021. But hopefully, it would be wonderful to have their children's choir come here to our church. This is the sign for the baby home that they have. Some of the babies that they get are found in fields, found in dumpsters, different things like that, but they find these babies and they take them in, and they have the ability to put them on oxygen or take care of them very, very well in the environment that they have. Very, very well organized. And we were able to play with the children there. This is where we slept at the retreat center, or you can see Mark is the one that took those pictures because we're talking on, they had Wi-Fi there, so we were able to talk back and forth, which is amazing to think about. You think about missionaries years and years and years ago who could call, even when I was a missionary in Peru years ago, before I even knew Mark, I would call a couple of times a year, but it cost a lot of money because you had to buy these special cards. Well, now you just have your phone and you just use FaceTime or different apps and you can talk to each other. It's amazing. But it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the white next to the beds. There was mosquito netting all around in that room. And the mosquitoes there, we were taking anti-malaria pills, but you have that around your beds to keep as many mosquitoes away from you as possible while you're sleeping, because the mosquitoes there carry malaria. And so then, after we had seen the children's home, we went shopping for a little bit, and then we just kind of relaxed. And then the next morning, Saturday morning, we woke up, and around 9 a.m., Uncle Mike and another driver, they needed 2 vehicles because we had all of our bags and all of us. And so they had to rent. They don't actually, Uncle Mike does not actually own any vehicles. That's actually something we're working on. But they have to rent vehicles to bring the people, because Soroti is about 8 hours by trip away from Kampala. And so they picked us up at around 9 a.m. and we drove for a very long ways. The picture there of the river, that's actually the Nile River. The Nile River is a very long river, which I never realized, but it goes from up in Egypt all the way down the same river that Moses was put out onto with his mother. But Uganda is much farther south than Egypt is. But this is the Nile River. It's very wide. There are crocodiles, although we never saw a crocodile. We never got in the river either. So we crossed over that and drove past. You drive past little huts, and people are selling things all along the road. Very different than what we see here. This is, I think that's a soccer field where kids are just running around playing soccer. Yeah. Yes, Caden says. And so about dinner time that evening, we arrived there in Soroti. The picture there on the right is the compound where we were staying. Mark said, I told him, I said, there's a wall, there's a cement wall around us with barbed wire and stuff. He's like, oh, so you're in a dangerous place? I said, no. I mean, if you own anything of value in Uganda, the same in Peru, if you own anything of value, you're going to surround it by a wall so that you keep it away from people who will steal it. That's just basically a kind of a third world country kind of a thing. So the wall surrounding us did have barbed wire on the top and then glass as well. Okay. Oh, and he wants me to tell you that that is Auntie Peace right there. She is one of the ladies from the church, from the Masali Church. She is also one of the social workers that works with Uncle Mike, who has he has some of the street boys are living with him currently, and she is one of those social workers who comes to work with them as well. She's also the leader of the ladies group of the church, and you'll see her in pictures farther on. This is Uncle Joseph. It's kind of hard to see him picking up Jackson. Chelsea, you can see in the background. Chelsea, the last time that Chelsea was in Uganda, she was pregnant for Jackson. And so they were very careful with her because she, one, gets very, very car sick. She was always in the front seat of the van. They drive, just so you know, they are like the English. They drive on the other side of the road, and their steering wheels are on the other side of the car. So that was kind of a little bit difficult to get used to. Thankfully, I wasn't driving, so I didn't have to worry about that. But she was always in the front because she gets extremely car sick. So when she was pregnant, it was even worse. So they were all very, very excited to see Jackson because they remembered him as being the baby that they very much took care of because she was carrying him. Yes, we'll see pictures of that in a minute. This is us standing in a group, kind of hearing the stories of the boys from the children's home, or not from the children's home, that live with Uncle Mike. Some of the boys that are from the street. I wish that I had thought to take some of Uncle Mike's pictures off of Facebook to show you what these boys looked like before they lived with him. They planned a very, very special meal. They had been cooking all day, and when we got there, they had this is a screened-in home. It was dark, so it's kind of hard to see anything, but they had lights out there, and they had decorated, and they made a meal with lots and lots of different foods for us, and they had their children sing a welcome song to us. It was very, very sweet. And the ladies from their church had come together and made lots of yummy food for us, which I was able to eat, which was amazing and wonderful and not helpful for any kind of losing weight that I had thought about for a trip. But it was beautiful to see just their welcoming spirit and their hospitality for us. This is a picture this is actually from the last day, our last Sunday that we were there, but the ladies of the church were very excited for us to come. Joan has been in communication with them for months and months and months about the pad project that I'll talk about in just a little bit. So they were very excited. They'd been waiting and waiting for us to come, just waiting in anticipation. The worship time there at their church was very much just like any worship time that we would have here. They actually, one of the songs that they sang was the song that John played for the offertory today. Sing a Hallelujah was one of the songs that we would sing there during their worship service. And they have been there in Soroti, their church. First, the original church was started in Mbali, and at 3 years after they started that church, they planted this church in Soroti, which is about an hour south, and they've been there for about 3 years. They rent out a hotel, and they have their church service in a main room in the hotel, and then they have their children's church services in different rooms around the hotel. So that was kind of interesting to see that. And these are some pictures from the home that we were at. Caden was very much enjoyed himself there because every day from the time he woke up till the time he went to bed, there were friends to play with. And since we were in that compound, it was a safe place to just let him run around and play. I didn't have to think. In fact, most of the time, he and Jackson just stayed there when we sometimes went out to go to places just because it was such long car rides and sometimes some situations that might not have been the best to bring our little boys into. But there was a cat there that Caden enjoyed very much, chasing and going around with. This is a little boy named Matthew. Auntie Joyce, one of the people that helped us set up Aicha, she we hired her kind of to come and stay with us and to cook for us because she is a very good cook. And this is her son Matthew, and he is 4 years old, and we brought him some toys. He's there playing with Nathan's little tractor truck and enjoying it very much. This is a little boy named Elijah, and he is Auntie Peace's son. Interestingly enough, his birthday is March 15th, 2016, which, if any of you remember Nathan's birthday, that is exactly the day after Nathan's birthday. Auntie Peace, we also found out, has the same birthday as Caden. And so we kind of made a connection there as moms. But Elijah was there, and so we got to see a lot of him because his mom was there at the compound with us. This is Matthew again, eating some of the applesauce pouches that I brought with me. Uncle Joseph is another person who was instrumental in starting Aicha. He is now, since Aicha is no longer doing their support for vulnerable families, they're still there, but they're just not able to continue that part of the organization. He has become the government official, or he has started an organization that works with all of the elderly people in the Soroti district. And so he has a group of people that are government officials that help to see what the needs are for all of the elderly people in that area, and he goes and helps to support them. They actually had us for a dinner. They had us for a very fancy, nice dinner, and they were able to thank us and share with us what they get to do, and it's just neat to see from the top down in Uganda. That was kind of the amazing thing to me, is that the government there is a very Christian government, which is different than what we experience here. But they had, from what I've been told by one of my friends, a number of years ago, they had a move of God there, and it really is from the top down. We had one of the government officials talking to us about how we need to share the love of Jesus with all the people in their district, and so it was really kind of refreshing to be there and to really have the permission of the government officials to minister there. This is Auntie Joyce. She's the one who cooked for us. And then the two boys. And then sometimes there were so many people that we were sometimes eating on the floor. The children were eating on the floor mostly. This is Pius. He is the nephew of Uncle Mike, and excited about the shirt that we brought him, that Michigan shirt. But he is another one of the social workers that lives in the house with Uncle Mike and the boys, and he helps them as they adjust to living in a home as opposed to living out on the streets. I guess there was lots of fighting and things that happen when they first come, because that's really what you're used to when you're living on the street. It went off. This is Aaron, just holding Matthew there. This is the mustard seed pad project, which was started by Joan. She has gotten different groups of ladies to come together and to sew pads. And some of the ladies from Our Ladies Bible Study have been helping her with that. And I will tell you that the ladies and the girls of Soroti area thank you all very much, because you have helped to give them a little bit more stability, and also the security of knowing that they have some things that they will need to help them to be able to go to school, especially to help the girls to be able to go to school. Not working. It's done. There we go. And this is us. They wanted to be able to share them with more girls, and so we took all of the pad. They're in beautiful little pouches. Well, they wanted to share it with more girls, so we took them apart, and we separated them so that we could hand it out to other girls there. And so we sat, the first Sunday that we were there, we sat and we did that with them. And then we went, that was the main purpose of all of our visits to the different schools that we were able to go to. Joan was able to sit with the teenage girls and to be able to talk to them about the packages, and then to be able to hand them out. And because we were special Americans coming, the whole school, like this is the first school that we went to, was kind of overwhelming because there were about 1,000 children. And they all gathered around us. And because we are their special visitors, we are expected to give speeches. And so you're like, oh, and I didn't know. We all didn't know that ahead of time. And the girls were all like, oh, well, we're not public speakers, but Rachel, you're a pastor's wife. You just go right ahead. And so, what do you do? So, I mean, you've got all the school officials that are standing there looking at you like, you've got speeches, right? You've got things to tell us. And so you just get up and you tell them that, thank them for letting us come to visit their beautiful country. And you talk about, I don't even remember what I said. It was kind of a blur. But we went, and they sang welcome songs to us. And the boys were a little bit overwhelmed. The boys were with us at that point with some of the other boys from the church as well. But all the boys ended up getting back in the van because there were so many children. It was kind of overwhelming for them. But they all want to reach out, and it was so funny because a lot of these children because they live farther out of town, and so the children who live farther out of town don't get to see white people very much. And so they would come up to me and they would touch my skin. They would go like this, and then they would run away. If I looked at them, they would run away really, really quick. It was really funny. It was almost like somebody had dared them to go and touch the white lady and see if her skin rubs off or something. And what was very interesting, especially when I would show them pictures of my son, my other son, who was not with me, they were shocked and surprised. They said, there are black people who live in America? I said, yes, actually, quite a few. So they were actually very shocked to know that they thought that it was only white people that live in America. So that was something interesting that I found out. On the Monday that we were there, before we would go into any of the villages, it's proper and appropriate to go to the government officials of that district to kind of ask their permission to be able to go into their villages in their district and to do the things that we were going to do. And so we went, and it was a very long morning with two boys, two 6-year-old boys who survived. But we were in 3 different offices, and we had to wait for the people who were already in the offices, visiting with the government officials, talking about whatever it is they were talking about. And so we were in 3 different offices that morning to meet with them. And I can't even remember what exactly they were, what their jobs were, but I just know that they were in charge of their district. This is the guy who is kind of like the mayor of the Soroti district. And he's kind of a gruff kind of a man, but having the boys with us was very helpful because it kind of seemed to loosen him up, and he really took to Caden, mainly because Jackson was like, oh, I'm not going up there to talk to him. But Caden went up, and he picked him up, and he held him, and it really helped to loosen him up. And they were very supportive of everything that we were doing, and they were very thankful to us for coming to help in their district. That day we also went to the hospital. And yes, there are some times where we complain and say we have not gotten good treatment here. Nah, not me, not again, because the hospitals in Africa, or at least in Soroti, are awful. Very, very heartbreaking to go to the hospital to realize that there are some people who have walked 10 miles to bring their sick children or themselves to these hospitals to sit in a big, I'll show you, that was I'll get to that in a minute, I'll go back. This is the area where they have a building where you can cook your own food so that you can have food to eat while you're there at the hospital. But their waiting rooms are kind of like that, just open air areas with cement benches for you to sit on, and some people wait all day long and don't get to see a doctor, and then either go back home and then come back the next day, or find a place to wait there in the town and come back and try to be the first ones there in the morning so that they can see a doctor. So it definitely did make me very grateful for our health care here. No matter how broken we feel like it may be, it is not that. I'll go back to this picture. This is, I have not personally given birth, but if you've ever given birth, this is the room that all of the mothers who have just given birth sit to recover. We also did go into a room where they have babies, and there are 3 beds very close together. So you can have multiple women having babies at the same time. So very different than here. Another little gathering area where people can wait to see a doctor. Sickle cell anemia is something that people with, black people really struggle with. It's really a lack of vitamins. After we left on August 6th, another man named Mark went over there, and his main ministry there is to bring them vitamins. And he brought, I think he had 15 bags full of vitamins that people had donated to take there. And just by taking just vitamins, and they weren't even like name brand vitamins, I think they were Kirkland brand, so Costco brand vitamins, but they have so many more nutrients in them that it helps them to feel better just by taking the vitamins. So you just realize that there's just a lack of nutrition a lot of times there, because the vitamins that they have there don't have as much potency as our vitamins here. We were also, as you know, Caden was saving and raising money to buy lots of soccer balls, and as well as we were able to give him $200 towards buying anything that he needed for the soccer ministry there. I think it's called the Eagles Soccer Ministry. Uncle Mike's main ministry is to the children there, to the street kids there, and we were able to give them soccer balls, and that was kind of an exciting day because they were all very excited to get those soccer balls, and we did have a pump where we pumped them up to be able to give them to the children there. That was pretty exciting, and they were very excited to get all of those. One thing that they do lack are the uniforms, and most of them, and I brought Caden's soccer stuff with him to play, but he'll tell you, my mom wouldn't let me wear my soccer shoes because most of the children play in bare feet. So 1, I didn't want them to feel bad that they didn't have shoes, and 2, I didn't want them stepping on anybody's feet with soccer cleats on. So but they're very, very good at soccer, but it's one thing that can occupy their time because the street kids are not in school. And so during the day, that's how Uncle Mike ministers to them, is he he has a ministry with them where he plays soccer with them, he shares the gospel with them, he disciples them, and he also cares for them in that if somebody needs to go to the hospital, they can go to he'll take them to the hospital and things like that. Hayden was also able to meet the goalie for the women's Ugandan soccer team, who was there one day while we were there, and that was kind of cool. And then we were able to, on the same day that we went to the hospital, we went back to where the street kids gather, and we paid somebody to make them a meal so that they could eat that day. Sometimes they get up and they don't always know when they're going to get to eat. And so we were able to have a meal where they were able to be fed. And then after that, I don't know if I put a picture up here of it, but I was able to share the EvangeCube with them, which was interesting because it had to be translated because a lot of them don't speak very good English. They speak the Ateso language, and so I had to speak and then be translated and all of that. Earlier that day, we had also passed out popsicles. We bought, for all 25 to 30 kids, I think we paid less than $2 for them all to have a popsicle, because there's a little guy on a bike with a cooler on the back of his bike with popsicles in it. But not popsicles that Caden could eat. He was like, "Can I have one of these?" And we're like, "Yeah, no," because they're made with the water that's there, and his stomach would not have handled that very well. And so then we went on home visits in the villages there. And you don't realize that there are, like, if you've gone to the zoo, you've seen the huts that are there, yes? And you don't think, oh, people live in these kind of huts. And then you get there and you're like, oh, people do live in these kind of huts back in the bush. Now, we obviously did not stay in a hut like that. But back in the bush, they do. They live in huts made from dirt and have straw for their roofs. Uncle Joseph's family actually lives out in one of these little, I wouldn't call them villages because it's just kind of a group of huts together where a family lives, a family group of huts, whereas he lives in town because he works in town and it's just too much to travel back and forth. So his family, his wife and children live out in the bush. And then there's just some children who were very excited to see themselves on camera. And some of these babies have never seen white people. They were not excited to see us. They were terrified. They were screaming and crying and hiding behind their moms because they were terrified of our white skin. Mark was very fascinated with this picture, so it's on there. It is me standing it's kind of hard to see, but it's inside a hut. Just a dirt floor, and they just sleep on usually maybe a piece of foam on the ground or some burlap bags that are on the ground, and that's where they sleep. This sweet little lady sitting there on the ground, Uncle Joseph is behind her, and Angela, one of the ladies from church, is bending down with the red dress, but the lady on the ground is 110 years old. So she has lived, I was thinking, she's lived through both world wars, and maybe she doesn't even know anything about them. But her daughter, who is in her 70s or 80s, is there as well, and they just all take care of her, and just amazing to see that somebody can live to be 110 years old, living out in the bush. It's probably actually a much simpler life. And she just was a sweet little lady who she can't do much except for come out of her hut and sit on that little burlap bag that she sits on during the day. But just a sweet lady. A mother with her children there. Some more kids. This was a very sad story. We went to a home. One of the boys that lives in the children's home, his name is Silas. He has, and most of the children who are street kids because of the fact that their parents don't care for them. So the government's goal there is to take the children back to their homes, But sometimes Uncle Mike has taken them there, and their parents say things like, well, if they come back here, I'm going to just sell them, or I'm going to break their legs, or just crazy things like that you just think, what in the world? So it's safer for them to live on the streets than it is for them to live at home. And we found that with the home here that we went to. His sister, who is 18 years old, she was fine up until the age of 8 when she contracted malaria, which is actually very common for people to get that there, and you can go and get treated for it very easily. Uncle Mike and one of our friends, Angela, who was in the picture before, actually had malaria while we were there, and you just go and you get medicine and you're treated for it, and then it goes away, just kind of like you get the flu here and you get medicine to take the flu away or whatever. But hers was not treated, and so because of that, the malaria went to her brain, and so she now lives with severe brain damage. And for the last 10 years, she's been, this is the home that they live in. I think we'll see pictures of that in a minute. This is Chelsea giving some dresses away to some of the little girls in the villages. Let's see here if I can get to the story of Gloria. I'll do that in a minute. Okay, this picture is a wonderful picture. Come here, Kaden. We went to visit this girl named Gloria, and while we were there, because we were the exciting white people, everyone wanted to know what we were doing, so everyone gathered around from the street. They gathered around, and there was a little boy there who had holes in his shirt. It was kind of like a dot-to-dot kind of a shirt, because there were so many different big holes in this shirt. And both Chelsea and I said to each other, I wonder if one of our boys would give him their shirt. And the boys were kind of like, give him. I don't even know this boy, was what one of them said. And then Kaden and I talked a little bit about it, and he was willing, although not in front of everybody. He went to the van, he took off his shirt, and I was able to give it to this little boy that I'm giving a hug to. Here, I think we have a picture of him later, but he was able to give his shirt to him. And so that little boy has a shirt that doesn't have holes in it, for a while at least, until it too wears out. So that was kind of a fun experience to be able to see Caden be able to give somebody something that he knew that he needed, because it was very obvious that this boy's shirt was in bad condition. So you can go sit down if you want. It's a picture in front of the Uncle Joseph's family. Then we went and visited one of the families that Chelsea was able to support for a number of time, and to see them be able to have their own farm and to be able to be self-sustaining was exciting, to be able to see that they have goats that they can milk, and they can sell their milk and sell the meat for that. Go back to where the goats were, and he was able to hold a goat. Oh, Ryan, he wants me to tell you that his friends, Ryan is the one holding a goat, and then the little boy in the orange behind him is Ethan. Two little boys who are sons of two of the moms from the church. Ryan is also adopted. It was kind of exciting to know, although he does not know that he's adopted. But his mom's name is Bernadette. And so, if you know my mom's name, her name is Bernadette as well. And her sister's name is Grace, which is also my sister's name. So that was kind of just an interesting little tidbit there. This is just a man who was riding by on his motorcycle with his two boys as we were driving down the road in a vehicle that should not be driven in the bush. That van had a very rough time that day. We actually ended up, as it's getting on towards night, it was getting darker, and we probably tore the exhaust system. It kept overheating, and then we put water in it, and that didn't work. And it was so thankfully we were able to call Uncle Mike, and he came out to rescue us. But we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, because we really were way out in the bush. Thankfully the boys were not with us. They had gone back to the compound with Uncle Mike at the time. But it was very interesting. I was like, I don't think I'm going to tell Mark about this until maybe a couple days from now. And this is one of the homes you can see way in the far back. The home, this is one of the families that Chelsea was able to support, and because of that, they actually have a very very strong structure for a home instead of a hut where it's falling apart. They had a hut that was not put together, but because of the support that Chelsea, so it was good for Chelsea to be able to go back and to be able to see, even though we weren't able to do everything that they wanted to do with Aicha, she could see that they had made a difference in this family's life by giving them a sustainable home. I don't know that we're going to make it through the slides today, because we're only about halfway through. Part one, and we'll just stop right here for right now. But we were able to do quite a bit there, and I'm excited to share more with you the next time we come together.
Next week. Does anybody have any questions you want to ask Rachel
First part.
for part one?
Grandma.
There, we'll get into a little bit more of that on the next time, because you'll see some pictures of some people. But the family is not very strong there. There are a lot of mothers who are just single with their children, men who don't want to stay and be with their families and support their families. And so that's kind of a hard thing to see. That's one thing that the Masali Church is trying to build up, and saying, it's important for the children to have fathers and to take care of them. And then if you are in a wealthy family, sometimes the men are the ones who have all the control, and so they keep the children even though they don't want to take care of them, and pawn them off on their family members. So that's kind of a sad thing to see that there. And so really the strength of the woman to take care of her children and to have the skills to do that is something that they try and teach very much, because of the fact that that husbands oftentimes don't care for and respect their wives. So that's a sad thing. Yes? The boys who live on the street don't go to school because they're living on the street, and they don't always have food to eat, and they don't have the money to pay to go to school, because school costs money to go there. Plus you have to pay for all of your notebooks and all of those different things. But the children who are living with Uncle Mike are paid for to go to school, and so that's one of the great benefits for them, is that they get to go to school and be educated, and then hopefully get a job once they graduate. Any other questions? Yes. Edwin, the guy who was our leader, his sister, brother, and mother have all passed away from AIDS. And then he was able to meet his father and actually establish a relationship with him. But his father also had AIDS and has died in the last 2 or 3 years. So a lot of children are orphans because of the AIDS virus as well. Caden. Soccer was his favorite part. He wanted to do that every day, and playing. So. So, all right. Well, we'll continue this to be continued, I guess. So.
So yes, we will continue this next week, so if you want to come back next week. Why don't we close just real quick with singing Spirit of the Living God together. So everybody, if you stand up, and we'll sing Spirit of the Living God, and then we can close up. Oh, you know that one. By heart, awesome. God, fall afresh on me. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The Lord be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen.